Alright, today I'm going to be talking about how the internet is destroying men, and if you don't realize what I'm about to talk about and address it, your life will just spiral out of control downward. So, the first thing is vices, right? So vices are anything that is negative, is bad for you. So think gambling, drinking, excessive pornography, right? So number one, that's the issue, is consuming too much porn, right? Fapping off 3-4 times a day. Like, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Do you not have anything else going on? So my main gripe with it, and I've read a lot of research, been in a lot of threads and all this, is it's a waste of time and energy. So if you think about the time you could use instead of jerking off, right, into investing in your fitness, in your health, in building skills, in making money, in making connections, if you are jerking off for hours a day, all of that is wasted. You get nothing out of it, right? If anything, you feel worse after because you have less energy, right? And so wasting time and energy goes for a lot of these things, but this is the main issue with that, right? It's also fake intimacy. So you just see pixels on a screen. It's not real. It's not the same kind of chemical release that you would get from a real relationship. So that's number one. Video games for men is also huge, and I have been a victim of this. I've spent a lot of time, especially teenage years and college, playing video games mindlessly. Like, if I had nothing else to do, I would run to my parents' basement and play video games, because it triggers something that we all innately feel, which is we want achievement, right? Men want to, build, conquer, fight, and achieve something. And what video games, especially the ones you get hooked on, do very well is they build in this false achievement. So you can see your exact experience points, where you rank, what level you are. You can see what you unlock next, right? You can see the community aspect, which would be, players, other people. And so it taps into all these things to make you feel like you're actually achieving something and you feel good about it. But then if you just think about it, and especially when you go to sleep at night and you think like, how did I do today? I spent 10 hours playing World of Warcraft or Call of Duty or whatever your thing is, right? It's fake achievement. It means nothing. It gets you nowhere. And you might think like, yeah, I'm really good at this, but it does nothing for you. You can maybe make a slight argument that, it helps improve reaction time and thinking on your feet, but you're much better served putting this time and energy into real achievement. And I'll talk about that later. So the other big issue with video games here, sticking on this topic for just another second, is the waste of time, okay? So porn, video games, a lot of these other things is a waste of time and a waste of energy, and it costs opportunity costs. So the opportunity that you would have had putting your time, energy, and effort into something else, let's say, building a business, building a social media account, or learning a skill, right, or going to the gym, the time you waste is put into here, and you don't even realize that you could have done so much better focusing on something else. So another vice that is huge for everyone is social media. Okay, now there are upsides to social media, right? Building a brand, building a business, building a following, monetizing it, learning all these sales skills and all these things. But if you're just mindlessly consuming social media, you fall into a couple of different issues. So first of all is comparison trap. Now, this was different a little bit ago, let's say on Instagram, where it was built around just seeing what other people you followed were doing. So they'd post their highlights, their graduation, buying this, achieving that, right? And you think like, damn, like I'm not really doing as good as these people. I feel like garbage, right? And it also does definitely lower your attention span. I've noticed this. If I scroll on Instagram, or back when I still had TikTok, I would realize, like, man, I don't want to do anything difficult or anything that takes even a few minutes to, let's say, boil a pot of water to make some rice. Like, that's too long. I just want to scroll, get my little dopamine hit from scrolling a bit more. So social media is also a huge waste of time. Not as much energy, but it's just mindless and does nothing for you. You might feel like you're being entertained and learning something, but unless you use social media as a tool, like physically, Google search things, or use YouTube, right, to look up tutorials for how to fill in the blank, right, learn a skill. Unless you're doing that, you're just wasting your time, okay? And probably damaging your psychology of, like, how you feel about yourself. So another thing is, with all of these things, it's basically instant gratification, right? So instant gratification gives you a quick dopamine hit, but then in the long term, it actually hurts you, because basically everything that gives an instant feedback, unfortunately, usually has a longer tail negative consequence that you don't actually even realize. So for that hour you spent scrolling or playing video games or jerking your meat, right, that is something that you could have realized way longer term benefits if you put an hour into the gym, and then you feel good for an entire day, right? Cooked a good meal and then you feel good for an entire day. Anything where you waste your time with these things chasing instant gratification, but you don't get anything in the long term, especially anything positive, okay? Same goes for alcohol, right? If you take 5 shots, right, and you're partying, that's instant gratification, instant dopamine hit where you feel good, you feel relaxed, you feel all these happy sensations, but then for the next day, 2, 3, you're gonna have a hangover, you're gonna skip the gym, you're gonna not work as hard, you're gonna have brain fog, all of these things. So it's essentially long-term pain, right? Immediate short-term pleasure, and on the back end you get long-term pain. The opposite, right, would be short-term pain, hitting the gym, taking time to study, working, but for long-term benefits, right? So another thing would be digital personas would be another vice. So it's not reality, and in a lot of cases these are fake highlights from gurus, from personalities, from anyone that you see in movies and all these things, where it's just the highlights, it's not real. So why men feel numb and lost? Well, the number one thing would be overstimulation. So today we have so many things trying to get after our attention. We have social media, we have TV, we have 5 different devices we could be on, we have a million different voices and people and things telling us what to do and think. And if you know anything about psychology, the more choices you're given, the harder it is for you to choose, right? If you were to only have, let's say, 2 options, option A or option B, you can weigh those, right? But with the overstimulation in today's society, especially on the internet, right, you don't have 2 options. You have an infinite amount of options. You can scroll forever and never pick a YouTube video. You can scroll on Instagram or TikTok and continue to look at these things and just look for the next interesting thing. And so overstimulation is a huge issue, okay? And from that, you get sucked into something called the dopamine trap, right? So you just chase the next little high, the next, the next reel, the next video, the next porn video, any of these things where you get stuck in this trap. So these 2 things cause loss of drive and ambition, okay? So if you are overstimulated and you're always chasing dopamine, what happens? Well, you tend to have your senses dulled, right? And you don't have the drive to do anything difficult. Why would you even want to get out of your bed and off your phone if you have junk food right in front of you, unlimited entertainment, and that's all you feel like you need? So if you're always stuck in this bubble, You're not going to want to work on anything hard. You're not going to be consistent work terms towards the long-term goal. You're not going to plan anything out. You're not going to have any ambition to achieve anything because you're stuck in this cycle. So after all of that, not only do you lose ambition and drive, but then you also start to feel depression, right? If you're stuck inside all day, on your phone all day, you don't go outside, you don't see the sun, you don't touch grass, right? You will feel depressed, and you'll be like, oh, why do I feel so just disgusting, right? And then also, consequently, you'll have lower testosterone, so you're not moving, you're not working out, you're not putting any effort into your health or fitness, and so your T levels drop, meaning you have even less drive, right? You have even less ambition, less confidence, and things only get worse. On top of that, with the internet and all of these issues over here, it also often causes anxiety, and you know, that's a real thing, because when you see everybody achieving things and you just feel like a million different things are pulling at you for your attention, you're going to feel anxious, okay? You're going to look at all these Reddit threads and be like, oh, which you know, mental illness do I feel like I have today? And the worst of all, in my opinion, from how I felt, from feeling trapped in this cycle, is wasted potential. So you go to bed, you think about, you know, finally you put the screen down, and you have nothing but your calm thoughts and darkness, and you think, damn, yeah, I really didn't do anything today, anything positive. I feel like I wasted my time, and I feel terrible about myself. And that's a horrible place to be. So, all that being said, with the vices and why this is happening and and the response from all these things, let's get into a before and after and talk about a solution, right? The solution. So before having the internet and all of this unlimited media and consumption and dopamine at your fingertips, people actually had brotherhood, believe it or not. They had a gym they'd go to consistently. They had a tribe, right? They trained martial arts. They had, you know, some sense of community where they see the same brothers every day, right? Or every week. And that has since been replaced largely with Discord, Reddit, comments, and things like that. So replacing real world activities with positive, tangible benefits with virtual, fake dopamine. And a lot of times these things are, you know, difficult to tell who's telling the truth or who's lying. So, and before all this internet stuff, and especially porn, right, there was real sex and dating. So before, you'd actually have to speak to women, hang out with them, talk to them, get to know them, before you can date them. But now, why not just go on Pornhub? Why not subscribe to some girls' OnlyFans, right? And then just jerk off and then be done with it. So we also, in the real world, right, before, we'd also have physical challenges. So, you know, races, working out, sports, a lot of these things takes actual energy and effort, right? And largely that's been replaced for a lot of guys with video games and mindless scrolling on social media, okay? And then finally, adventure and risk. This is one of the coolest things ever, is to like literally explore the world and see how things actually work in real life and not just behind a screen, and maybe risk, you know, starting a business, working on something. But for the most part, people just stick to Netflix, Grubhub, fast food, the internet, porn, and all of those things. So the issues with vices are what you should recognize, right? And then what happens if you fall into them is this kind of cycle of overstimulation, dopamine, depression, and all that. And the before and after, what these things are synthetically based off of. Now, how to fight back is the real question, right? How do we get out of this cycle of being stuck and trapped and just deteriorating? So, number one is clarity of vision, okay? So if you actually take time to develop role models, whether they're in real life or behind a screen, that's huge, right? So if you look up to someone, then you're going to want to be like them, and subconsciously you'll work towards a lot of their archetypes, right? For me, I've always liked John Wick, and so I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, and judo, okay? And then I also have a real-life multiple mentors. My uncle, who runs a massive construction company, so it made me want to be more entrepreneurial, and then my martial arts coach as well. So role models are huge. Having real people to look up to helps even more, okay? And then doing research, right? Doing research on, what do I even want? What are my skills? What do I want to achieve? What's even possible? If you don't even know what you can work towards, right, then you won't even be able to try. So for me, my end goal would be to have a property in Boca Raton on the waterfront. So that's very expensive. That'll take a long time. But if I have that big of a goal, then I'll actually stretch myself to work harder and work towards that goal, right? And so having goals is so important, because if you don't have goals and you're just mindlessly scrolling on social media, playing video games, jerking your shit all day long, then you're just not even going to realize your wasted potential, okay? So with those things, if you have first clarity of vision, the next would be to develop discipline, focus, and consistency, okay? Discipline, focus, and consistency will equal major growth in your life. So if you can actually say, no, I'm going to break this cycle. I'm going to start hitting the gym every day, even if it's for 10 minutes, 5 minutes a day, just to tick off that box. Then you say, yes, I did this. Okay, I worked towards something positive, right? Then you also build focus into that. So you focus on, nope, I'm doing this task right now. I'm not on my phone. I'm not on my computer. I'm not, talking on the phone. I am working on research, building, working out, right? Developing social skills, getting out in the real world, all of these things. And then on top of that, if you do those things consistently over a long enough period of time, you'll start to see a massive long tail exponential type of growth, right? So you're not going to see results immediately, though with the gym and some business models, you might see things come fairly quickly, but it's not going to give that long tail reward like it would unless you put in a consistent amount of effort. So for the gym, it would be a few months, right, before you start to notice more muscle, more testosterone, and you start feeling better. For your career, it might take a few years to actually get the job you want, build the business you want, right? And so with all of these things, you need to be able to recognize the vices, the issues, and replace them with a real plan and just work relentlessly towards it. I hope this video helped. Click the video appearing on your screen, and I'll see you on the next one.